People pleasing isn't about being too kind. It's about learning to make yourself small enough to be kept. At some point, you figured something out. Your power made people uncomfortable. Your certainty created friction. Your boundaries produced consequences. Your needs generated resistance. And the math became clear. The more you suppress your power, the smoother things went. The less you asserted, the less you paid. So you adapted. You softened your edges. You absorbed the tension. You managed yourself down so the environment could stay stable. And everyone called it kindness. But it wasn't kindness. It was a calculation. You learned that your power had a cost in certain rooms. And people pleasing was how you paid it before anyone asked. Once you see that, you stop treating this like a personality trait and you start seeing it for what it actually is. A power suppression strategy that's still running long after the original threat is gone. People pleasing doesn't show up everywhere. You don't water yourself down with people who have no authority over your life. You don't soften your edges with strangers who can't affect your access. You don't suppress your power in rooms where your position is already secured. You do it selectively, in specific environments, with specific people, under specific conditions. At work, with the person whose approval controls your visibility. In family, with the person whose disappointment you learn carries weight. In relationships, with the person whose reaction you learn to anticipate and preempt. In friendships, with the person whose withdrawal you've been trained to prevent. It doesn't appear everywhere because it was never about your character. It was always about the power structure of that particular environment. And where the power structure is uneven, your suppression keeps it stable. Because when your power goes down, someone else goes up. People pleasing is not generosity, it's power management. Specifically, managing your own power down so the environment around you stays comfortable. When the dynamic is uneven, you don't assert, you scan. You read the room before you speak. You measure their mood before you move. You calculate the cost of honesty before you open your mouth. And then you adjust, not toward what you need, toward what keeps the temperature stable. Imagine this scene. You're in a meeting. You've already identified the problem. You already know what the right answer is, but you fill the room. Someone of your senior is invested in a different direction. The energy shifts the moment you consider speaking up. And instead of naming what you see, you hear yourself say, "That's actually a good point. I could be wrong about this. Maybe we should just go with what works for everyone." That wasn't uncertainty. That was power suppression happening in real time. You had the authority. You had the read. You had the answer. But the cost of using your power in that room felt higher than the cost of abandoning it. So you ask a different question now. Not why do I always minimize, but whose comfort does my minimizing protect? That question is where your power starts coming back online. This didn't happen all at once. Power suppression is a learned response, and it was taught through repetition. Think about a pressure system. In any enclosed environment, pressure builds when forces are unequal, and the system will always find the path of least resistance to release that pressure. Now think about what happens when that path of least resistance is always you. The first time you absorbed the tension to avoid a consequence and it worked. The second time you did it again, faster, because you already knew the outcome. By the 10th time, you weren't even conscious of the calculation. The pressure entered the room and your nervous system automatically found the exit. You. That's not weakness, that's efficiency. Your system was doing exactly what it learned to do. Route the pressure through the available channel. But when the channel is always you, something starts to happen. The pressure doesn't stop building in the environment, it just stops being visible. Because you absorbed it before it could surface. In an environment that never has to manage its own pressure, never develops the structure to hold it. Which means the longer you've been the release valve, the more the environment depends on you staying in that position. Not because you belong there, but because power systems always rely on the path of least resistance to keep functioning. And you made yourself available. Ask yourself directly, who benefits when you suppress your power? It's rarely you. The manager who never has to address team conflict directly because you smoothed it over before it reaches them. They benefit. Your power maintains their comfort. Their authority stays unchallenged. The partner who never has to examine their behavior because you adjust around it before a conversation is necessary. They benefit. Your suppression protects them from accountability. The family member whose emotional volatility never gets named because you regulate the atmosphere whenever they enter a room. They benefit. Your power management keeps the dynamic invisible. The friend group that never has to make space for your actual preferences because you've already pre-agreed to whatever they wanted. They benefit. Your accommodation removes the need for reciprocity. Every time you suppress your power, someone avoids a consequence they should have faced. Someone keeps authority they haven't earned. Someone stays comfortable inside a dynamic that costs you. That's not an accident. That's a power structure doing exactly what power structures do. Organizing itself around whoever has made themselves most available to absorb the friction. Here's what most women don't realize. You've been the one keeping the system intact, not because you're weak, not because you don't know better, but because you keep showing up for your role in it. Every time you pre-read the mood and adjust, you remove the need for them to regulate themselves. Every time you smooth the interaction before tension surfaces, you protect the structure from having to redistribute. Every time you absorb the friction instead of letting it sit, you prevent the imbalance from becoming visible to everyone in the room. You thought you were keeping the peace, but what you were actually doing was making yourself responsible for a power structure that was never yours to maintain. Here's what most people misunderstand. They think the discomfort they feel in these environments is evidence that something is wrong with them, but that discomfort doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the system, the one that only functions when you keep your power suppressed. The moment you stop absorbing, the pressure has nowhere to route, and the system has to do something it has never had to do while you were there. Hold its own weight. That's when a power structure is forced to reorganize. And that's when your power stops disappearing into the environment and starts staying with you. Pay attention to this. When in your life do you water yourself down before anyone asks you to? Not everywhere, just in specific rooms, with specific people. Where does your power go quiet so the environment can stay comfortable? That's not your personality. That's a pressure system that learned to route through you. Here's what happens when you stop suppressing. And I'm telling you now so you recognize it when it comes. Someone will say you've gotten difficult. Someone will say you're being selfish. Someone will say you used to be easy to talk to. Someone will question whether something is wrong with you. Not because you became harder, but because the pressure you used to absorb is now sitting in the room with nowhere to go. When you stop managing yourself down, the people who relied on your suppression will try to restore it. They'll apply social pressure. They'll withdraw warmth. They'll reframe your power as a problem. They'll suggest that the version of you that disappeared was the better one. That's not feedback. That's a power system trying to find its release valve again. And recognizing it is exactly what keeps you from sliding back in. Because the resistance is not a sign you've gone too far. It's confirmation that the system felt the shift. People pleasing ends when power suppression ends. Not through confrontation, not through speeches, not through explaining why you've changed. Through one thing, letting your power take up its natural space. Here's what it sounds like in real time. Someone challenges your decision at work. Old response. I could be wrong. It was just a thought. We can do it your way if that makes more sense. New response. I've considered it. This is the direction I'm taking. Someone in your family makes a comment designed to create doubt. O response. No, I know you're probably right. I've been going back and forth on it too. Maybe I should think about it more. New response. I hear you, and you don't move. Someone in your social circle expects you to adjust your plans again. O response. It's fine. I'll just make it work. I don't want anyone to feel bad about it. New response. That doesn't work for me. Period. Full stop. The shift is not in the volume, it's in the finality. Power doesn't require justification. It requires you to stop offering justification as a substitute for it. Here's the distinction most people never reach. You've been asking, why can't I just set a boundary and hold it? But that was never the real question. The real question is, why does your power require permission in this environment? Because here's what's actually true. You don't lack the ability to hold a boundary. You learned in specific environments with specific people that your power needed to be managed down for the relationship to continue. People pleasing isn't something you fix by building confidence. It's something you exit by stopping the suppression. The moment you let your power take up its actual space, not louder, not harder, just unmanaged. The dynamic has to reorganize around someone who is no longer available to absorb its friction. Not because you became a different person, because you stopped hiding the power you already had. Now you have a choice. You can keep managing your power down so the environment around you stays comfortable, or you can recognize that what looks like kindness has actually been functioning as suppression and stop participating. One keeps the system intact. The other restores your power. Quietly, cleanly, permanently. This channel isn't about becoming louder or harder. It's about naming the systems that taught you your power was a problem and understanding that it never was. And if you're ready to stop watering yourself down and start letting your authority hold its actual weight, subscribe. You're in the right place.